Hi all, welcome to today's session. Today we are going to discuss on a topic that is known as demographic cycle. The term demography is very familiar to all of us, and we know what is demography. Demography is derived from two terms. Demo means population of the people, and graphy means it's a study. Studying of people is known as demography. It's one of the very common terminology we use in your daily life. And there is a cycle, or there is a cyclic changes happening in demography. That is our topic for today's discussion. What is demography? It's a scientific study of human population, which include study of changes in the population size, its composition and distribution. So what we study? We are studying, is there any changes in the population size? Is there any changes in the population composition? And is there any changes in the distribution of population? That is what the demography is all about. And we would focus more on the stages of demographic cycle. And actually, there are 5 steps or the 5 stages of demographic cycle, in which first step is it is high stationary. Second stage is early expanding. Third one is late expanding. Fourth one is low stationary. And the last one is declining phase or the declining stage. So we are moving into the first stage, that is high stationary. Before moving in detail on stages of demographic cycle, shall I remind you, like, you have to remember 2 indicators in your mind when you're studying demographic cycle. First one is, it is birth rate, and second one is death rate. What is birth rate? People are born in a particular population, number of people born into a particular population during a particular time period. That is birth rate. And what is death rate? Number of people died in a particular population during a specific time period. That is death rate. These 2 things you have to keep in mind while you are studying the stages of demographic cycle. First one is, that is what we have discussed. There are 5 phases, and each phases we have seen. And first stage is known as high stationary. So these 2 indicators are very high in high stationary. So under first stage, under high stationary, birth rate will be higher and the death rate will be higher. So what happens in a population, for example, in a country or in a population, if there is a high death rate and high birth rate, what happens? It cancels each other. It cancels each other. As a result of that, there won't be any change in population. The population will be stationary. The population become constant, or it become stable. So that is what first stage is known as high stationary, in which high birth rate and high death rate. Hope this is clear. Till 1920, India was in this stage. Remember, till 1920, India was in this stage. The second stage is known as early expanding. So there is some changes is happening here. That is why it is known as early expanding. So what happens? Birth rate remain unchanged. So what happens to the birth rate? There is no change in the birth rate. As in the high stationary, or as in the first stage, birth rate will become higher. Birth rate will be very high. More number of people are born into a population. Birth rate will be high and death rate begin to decline. There is a slight decrease in the death rate. As a result, what happens? More people are born into this population, and death rate slightly decreases. As a result, population increasing. There is a booming, or there is increase in the population. Example, countries like South Asian countries and Africa, they are in this phase. The third stage is known as late expanding. So we have seen high stationary. Second point, early expanding, and we have reached into the third stage, late expanding. Here, birth rate tends to fall. There is a beginning, or there is a slight decrease in the birth rate. Remember the term, there is a slight, or the tend to fall. Birth rate tend to fall and death rate declines still further. So there is more decrease in the death rate and there is a slight decrease in the birth rate. As a result, population continues to increase. Population is increasing. The best example is India. Our country is in this phase right now. And that is next we are moving into the fourth stage of demographic cycle. It is known as low stationary. We already studied high stationary. Under high stationary, what happens? Birth rate is high and death rate is high. But in low stationary, there is a low death rate and low birth rate. So as a result, same thing, same result as in the high stationary or the first stage. So population become stationary. It cancels each other. So there is no population growth. There is zero population growth. Example is Austria during 1980-85 period. And the last and the final stage of demographic cycle is declining phase. What happens here? Again, as we have seen in the previous slide, there is a lower birth rate and lower death rate. Lower birth rate and low death rate. Just notice the terms we have used, lower and low. So what happens here? Lower birth rate than the death rate. So what is happening here? Birth rate will be very low than the death rate. Birth rate will be very low than the death rate. Death rate will be higher here. As a result, population decreasing. The number of people are decreasing, or it is known as declining phase. So the fifth stage is otherwise known as the stage of declining. So birth rate is very less than the death rate. So population is decreasing year by year or the time by time. Best example is Hungary and Germany. They are experiencing this stage. So to sum up, we have seen various phases of demographic cycle. As I told you, demography means scientific study of human population, and we study population, its size, composition, and distribution. And there are 5 stages of demographic cycle. First one is high stationary, early expanding, late expanding, low stationary, and declining. Hope this is clear. And before I conclude, India during 1920 period, we were in high stationary stage. At present, India is in late expanding stage of demographic cycle. Hope it is clear to all of you. Thank you for listening and sparing your time to this presentation. Thank you all. Thank you very much.